All right, full house. Warm welcome everybody to our DIASCA roundtable meeting today here. Thanks everybody for joining us online. I'm very happy to have you all as part of our roundtable of DIASCA, Digital Integration of Agricultural Supply Chains Alliance. We've come a long way, safe to say. We had the first roundtable back in 2022. We had several roundtables since then. We have our working groups that we're going to talk about in a minute and tell you more about it. We had a strategic meeting last year around this time of the year in Berlin. It was nice and warm weather. And we're seeing, even you need to change this. We don't see the slides. Anyhow, we're going to continue. So, Raven, can you please change back to the slides? Thank you. For those slides. All right, so let's start back again. So as I said, we had a lot of things going on. We had our strategic meeting last year in Berlin around the same time. And today we want to come together. We have a 2.5-hour roundtable where we want to, first of all, give you an update what has happened right over the course of the last couple of months. With the roundtables, we always want to bring together the community, people who are already involved in DIASCA for quite some time, people who heard about it, people who are new. So everybody, again, warm welcome. We want to give you the opportunity to exchange with each other, to learn from each other, and of course, then further discuss what are the next steps, how is DIASCA going to develop. Just briefly want to take a look at the agenda. And today we, as you might know, make the roundtable quite interactive. So we're going to start briefly with a presentation by Lars Karnert and Pascal Ripplinger from GIZ about the big picture. So really going into some of the updates, what has happened recently. Speed dating, you know, that's a fundamentally important element for you to connect with each other. And then, sorry, Levin, we're seeing the wrong screen. Can we go back to the agenda, please? Thank you. So after the speed dating, we go into the update blog where we have our 3 working groups that have been going on traceability, living income, and forest monitoring. So we will hear more about what has happened in the working groups. That will be brief impulses, but also there we give the opportunity to ask questions. So we'll have a Q&A. We then go into our snapshot part. Just a bit more insights on data. We're going to hear more about the Forest Data Partnership and, of course, from lessons learned on the ground. We have a breakout session then, or several breakout sessions coming up later on, where we, together with you, want to discuss about the bigger picture. What are the focus topics and should be the focus topics of the next phase of DIASCA? What are the different activities or potential activities? What are the roles and what can actually the stakeholders contribute to it? And where are the gaps? That's something we want to talk about. And then finally, we conclude with an exchange here in the big group. So that said, maybe just briefly, so we have this in MS Teams environment. I think everybody is quite familiar with MS Teams. We're going to record this session, so I hope that's fine with everybody. Generally, please, everybody, turn on your camera. That has been turned off by default, so just click on turn on your camera, but keep the microphones muted for the presentation part, of course, not for the speed dating and for the group work. So I see first people turning on the camera. Matthew, good to see you. And yeah, we want to see the rest of you. We have a big group. We have more than 50 people now here in our roundtable. And I would say if you're all ready, let's get started. And I would hand over to Pascal and Lars from GIZ for the big picture and kind of an update. So Lars, Pascal, over to you.
Thank you, Leonard, for the introduction, and welcome also from our side. Happy to see you again. Happy to see very much known faces, also some new faces here. And we would like to start with the big picture and some DPI key ingredients. And we would like to just give you some background information, why the DIASCA has been initiated and why it's important to work on this topic and why to meet today. So when it comes to the digital ecosystem, and I think many of us work in this environment with different digital tools, with different new innovative applications, which is quite interesting to see these days. There are so many news and new tools coming up, and so much innovation is driven also by legislative processes like the EUDR. However, and I think this is also a trend we need to talk about here, is when we talk about the digital ecosystem, we see a lot of fragmented digital markets on the one hand. And second, when it comes, for instance, to data exchange, there is a lack of standard approaches and also lack of interoperability. So when you compare this, for instance, to cars and roads, it's somehow everybody is building their own roads to drive their own cars on, and this leads to quite inefficient ways of interlinking different IT solutions. And last point to mention here, there is a lack of data reusability and also open data. I mean, there is a lot of open data, but also there could be a way to improve that. What does that mean for farmers? So when it comes to farmers and cooperatives using digital tools and data, there is often simply a lack of access to digital solutions. It could have different reasons, lack of digital infrastructure, lack of digital literacy, but also just lacking information which tool could be accessed and how it could be used. And further, there is a lack of, or it could create, economic and digital dependencies. If, for instance, cooperatives are linked to different buyers and they force their suppliers to use this or that system, and that could lead also to lack of data sovereignty. So this is one of the questions we get asked the most: who owns the data in project context? And I think this is a very, very important question to ask, because this data has a value, and this value needs to be given back to the producer organizations and to the farmers, and they need to work with the data if possible. So there could be an additional burden instead of a benefit for the farmer organizations from digitalization. However, it should be the other way around, because what we see these days, it's a boost of digitalization in agriculture. And I think this is something where we should lead the way in a positive path, to avoid that there is a risk of exclusion for especially the farmers. And the way to go there is digital public infrastructure. And this is what we're going to focus today about. What does digital public infrastructure mean? So it's quite a complicated word in the beginning, but it has some practical implications behind it. So with this group and the DIASCA network, we would like to facilitate digital public infrastructure on the one hand on national level, but also on global level, global alignment and exchange. And it has different parts to be considered here. One is the technology part, and the other side is the human part and the policy part. So for instance, there are some tech building blocks and open source products, which we're going to have a look today at, and some will be presented later on. We are talking about open standards and identifiers. We will also have a spotlight on later on. And also public data is very important, as I mentioned in the beginning. And this will also be highlighted briefly today, how this data can be accessed and also used. This is more on the technology side, but on the other hand, there's also a very important part of the human side and the policy. So what are the enabling rules between different actors to use technology building blocks, or how to use the standards, and how to access, for instance, the data, and what is the governance behind it? And second, I think it's also the third point here is also important to talk about the different business models behind it. What is the reason to build sustainable business models? How could this work? And what are possible pathways here? And we will have a look at this also today. And that's why, this community has been established, the DIASCA community, with about 600 actors in total, from public sector, from private sector, tech companies, science, smallholder cooperatives, and so on. And just to sum up what DIASCA is, and I mean, some of you heard it already, but just to narrow it down here, DIASCA is a neutral, pre-competitive, and inclusive multi-stakeholder network to work on this DPI implementation, what we just showed before, especially in agriculture. So the scope is sustainability in global agricultural supply chains, and it has a clear focus on smallholder inclusion and benefits to tackle these issues, what we showed in the beginning. And the approach behind it is first to coordinate different efforts. There is a lot of efforts in this field, and to streamline also activities, to align, and also to facilitate cooperation between the different actors is one of the important approaches of DIASCA, and also to identify resources and to facilitate these resources in a way that it's used in an efficient way. So this convening aspect behind it, and to bring people together to think about innovative solutions, to discuss issues, problems, and also to identify potential other actors which could be part of this journey. And when we are talking about actors and partners which are working here, I'm handing over to Lars. He will give us an overview about this now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pascal, and warm welcome from my side also to everybody. It's been a while since we had our last roundtable talking about actors. So Pascal mentioned that DIASCA is a network. It's about enabling, it's about convening, it's about really connecting dots. And when we say we come to the impressive activities that will be presented and have been carried out, it's not that it's a DIASCA project, but it's like the work of the network and of the individual actors. So we are working with here it says core partners. So we have a lot of core partners. And I might do injustice to some of them that are not mentioned here, and I won't be able to highlight all the different partnerships mentioned here. But we have a couple of you right at the table and presenting today, including CIAT, a center of CJR. We are, of course, closely aligned with SAFE, which together with DIASCA, we are part of the SASI cluster within GIZ. We have been working with the Forest Data Partnership, especially FAO and World Resources Institute, and many more. And another important aspect I would like to mention is the collaboration around the tech building blocks itself, and the collaboration with AgStack under the Linux Foundation. And of course, COSA will also play an important role during this meeting here as well. And many other partners. So it's really a network and connecting dots and enabling and finding synergies, and that's what DIASCA has been quite successful in. Preempting a little bit the discussion we would like to have with you in the breakout groups, we have been working and we are looking into where should we be heading and what else should we do. So clearly, we have had, in terms of topics and use cases, we have been working on traceability, we have been working on living income, farm income, and on forest monitoring. And you will hear updates from all the three working groups later on. And clearly, a key driver naturally has been for all the activities has been the EUDR, the EU Deforestation Regulation, simply because it's a shared pain and it comes with a date, unless other maybe even more urgent topics. In terms of geographies and sectors, we will also get an update. We have had quite a coffee bias through also the nice partnerships with the international coffee organizations, with Nairobi Coffee Exchange, etc. Also with cocoa, we have been working. You'll hear about this later in Honduras and Kenya and other countries on the pipeline. Partnerships I've already mentioned, and another aspect is technologies. Where should we be heading? There's AI, of course, that we are looking into. How can AI kind of foster or grease or accelerate, so to say, the mission that we're working on. And interoperability has been a key point from the very beginning, as also Pascal mentioned earlier. And just to sketch a little bit of a vision, you see all the different Lego blocks, and Pascal mentioned the lack of interoperability and the fragmentation of the digital market, if you want. So I just put it here. What if the different tools were Lego blocks that have different kind of capabilities, but that would fit together, and we would have ideally an open source, a governed and open source toolbox of individual Lego blocks serving different capabilities, which would be governed by community, possibly under XStack. That's just a teaser, and with that, I'm done with my presentation right now, and let's dive into the real issues. Over to
me. Thank you very much,
Leonard.
Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. And we not only dive into the issues, but first of all, you mentioned connecting the dots. And certainly that's something that we are going to do here at the roundtable. Those of you who have been part of one of the previous roundtables, you know we love that tool and that little thing that comes next. So we want to go into speed dating. And no fear about that. That's going to be a fun round. Few rules. I mean, first of all, it will be 5 minutes. 5 minutes are super short. That's why it's called speed dating. So we will put you now in groups of 3 in a few seconds. Please, everybody, turn on your camera, turn on your mic. And we called it you and your participation in DIASCA. You might have not met before, so brief introduction on you and your organization and probably how you have been involved in DIASCA. I'm sure you find a lot of good talking points and discussions. If you're all ready, 5 minutes. As I said, we're going to open the rooms now. You will be moved there in 10 seconds. And have fun, everybody. I'll see you back here on the big stage soon.
Hallo.
Pascal? Hello. Let's just call this a breakout room, so we're more than 3.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hat das Zuteilen gerade nicht mehr funktioniert, oder?
Maybe we are the leftovers. I don't know. Let's just consider ourselves a speed dating group. I don't know if the others can hear us.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Who wants to start?
We have already introduced ourselves, kind of, but you haven't.
Yeah, I can start. I have I went to Ghana last year with Sasi in like a working students group where we went around and visited some places of agricultural production in Ghana. And so I came to know DIASCA through this program, through this course as well.
Okay.
And I got interested in it. I wrote my master thesis about the EUDR. So I don't have anything to do with DIASCA directly, but I'm really interested in what you're doing and interested in how this program proceeds. So yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
Yeah, and currently I'm working for the Center for Organizational Sustainability in Wittenherdecke at the University Wittenherdecke. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Beverly.
Hi, I got a bit stuck. I was in a room, but I was only with one other person and they couldn't hear me or see me.
Oh,
So I switched devices and now
okay.
I'm in a different
So at
room.
least
So
it worked
hello.
with the room. So it's always a little bit of a challenge with.
Yeah, no
You can
worries.
rehearse 100 times, but then you still have something. Anyway.
That's the blessing of technology, right? Hi, everybody. I guess I can introduce, since I'm unmuted, I'll introduce myself very quickly. I'm Beverly Hatcher-Mbu. I'm the Director of Policy and the Agriculture Portfolio Lead at Development Gateway and IREX Venture. We're a hybrid of program managers and software developers, and we've worked across multiple agriculture value chains, mostly across Africa. We've worked in the cashews value chain, seed, research development, fertilizer, livestock, and soil health. So we come from a lot of different perspectives of seeing how data and digital work in these different spaces, and are following very closely the conversation around DPI because we work with a lot of legacy systems in the different countries that we work with. So happy to talk about that more, but very happy to be here. I don't remember how I found DIASCA, but it sounds super relevant for what we're working on and what we care about. So really excited to be here. This is my first roundtable.
Beverly, may I jump in? Hi, everybody. You're already back in the big group. You might not have noticed. So we got everybody back on the center stage. I warned you, 5 minutes. That's quick, right? There was a little timer. General quick check. Was everybody happy with the speed dating? And I assume yes, because that will mean we do a second round. So Beverly, you will also now be mixed in a new constellation. You know how the game works. 5 minutes. We do a second round and the rooms will open in a few seconds. And then don't be surprised if you're back on the big stage in 5 minutes again. That's the game. So Levin will open the rooms. Yeah, you see the notification. Now everybody, either you can click on join room or you will automatically, magically be moved there. 5, 4, 3, 2. See you.
Nope.
So we stay in the same room again.
We're the leftovers group. Anybody else can hear us? Like
Greg
Yes.
or Nicholas?
Yeah,
Nicholas?
I hear you. I'm actually here because I got booted from my other room. So, and then I rejoined. So I don't know if that's part of the system. Maybe that happened to Ashley as well. We were speaking just before. Didn't get a chance to say goodbye. It was lovely to meet you.
That's all intentional, of course. Ashley, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you, Pascal. And indeed, hi, bye, Nico. I got roughly kicked out in the middle of it.
Whoops.
Yeah, sometimes it goes quickly. Then it takes a little bit of time again.
Hi, George. Hi, Michaela.
Hello. Yeah, same thing happened to me. I was kicked out of my room and lost connection.
Yeah, so we're the room of the remainders.
Yeah.
Shall we call it a speed dating of more than just 3?
Yes.
Does anybody want to introduce? We have already introduced ourselves.
I
I
can
can-
introduce myself. Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Let me see if my camera works. My camera was also not working earlier. Hi everyone. I'm Michaela. I'm from the European Forest Institute. I've joined with a couple of the roundtables. And my work is mostly in the cocoa sector in West Africa. And I'm always quite interested to hear about the developments with the digital infrastructure and how that might be applied with some of the actors that I work with.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for joining. I need to call you out, Michael. You're muted.
Yes, I'm on an iPhone. I'm a vice chairman of a small Danish NGO, and we have actually built a digital platform for organic certification, among other things. So, and this is a voluntary effort. So, but I'm very interested to learn about other efforts, other ongoing efforts. Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
I think it will be exciting things that
And
will be
Dominic,
shared.
did you already present yourself? Because yeah, what's your role and
Me?
where are you? Yes.
I'm Levin. I'm the new intern, or not new anymore, but the intern at GIZ at Digitalization and Coffee for the next 5 months. And I'm doing the technical hosting today. So if you get dropped out of your session, it's because of MS Teams or because of me.
Okay. I dropped out, but I'm back.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you. So it's the
If there's-
three of us. Oh, we have Car. Please. Who else is here?
George, you switched on your camera already.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Yes, Pascal. And so my name is George. I work for the Global Coffee Platform, and I am based in Nairobi.
Nice to meet you.
Great to have you. See you soon.
Yes.
Yeah, see you soon.
But now I
And
think
come
we need to.
prepared for cold weather.
Now we are back on. We're actually sitting on stage, so now we should mute ourselves again.
Now
Okay.
everybody's back on stage. Welcome back. Yeah. Some of us have been muted already. Last you haven't. You have the extra right. So welcome back, everybody. This is our second round of speed dating. As we said before, we want to connect the dots, and we find this always very valuable and important that you actually are able to connect with each other. What we want to do now is a quick poll, because we have quite a diverse audience here, different countries, different backgrounds in terms of organization. So let's have that poll coming up in a second. And we want to hear, first of all, from which country are you participating today? So a little word cloud. Everybody, the poll should have been popping up. If not, you can click on the meeting chat. There it's as well. Put your answer. And I'll give you everybody a few minutes. A few seconds.
Leonard, this is John. I think there's we lost maybe about 15 people, and some may be waiting in the lobby.
All right. Yeah, thanks. We will check that. Does anybody else see the poll? The poll should have been popping up, but since I don't see any replies, I'm not sure.
I see
Visible.
it, but I only see my own answer.
I see replies. A lot of replies.
Okay, that's good then.
The same for me. I also only see Germany, so that's where I'm based. Just let's bridge the time. Where are you based? 44 replies. Okay, got it. So yes, there are the responses. So everybody, if you're also in the chat, of course you can submit your answer, but then you can look at the responses and then you can see the proper word cloud. Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, Kenya, Ethiopia, Colombia, Guatemala, Portugal, US, Norway. So yeah, we've got a wide international group of people here. There were 50 responses, so good to learn more about it. Then want to hear, we have another question. Second question for you. Of course, we want to hear about the background. Which type of actor do you represent? What type of organization? And same, you can just enter your response and you will be able to see the results. So,
Wait, you need to click on the second page where you have a multiple choice.
thank you, Lars. Yes, exactly. So everybody, you see the poll. Click on the second page. Are you a producer organization? Are you from the private sector, the public sector, an association, academia, NGO, consultancy, IT and technology, or individual? And again, same game in the chat. You see the responses coming in. I'll take a look at it. So Levin, you might want to share the answers with us.
Yeah, they're still loading now. You should see them. You see them? No.
Nope, not really.
Okay. A second.
Well, there's a little technology is not our friend today, so there's a little glitch in that. So you can either put the X. So let's. Yeah, we just see your screen now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's that's not working. It's not loading.
Okay, bear with us on that one. We'll submit the results on that one later, Levin. Let's do pragmatic cut here on the polls, and we'll share the results later in the chat. I would say let's really now jump into the updates, right? And we've been talking about it. Lars and Pascal gave the update before that we've been talking about the working groups, and we want to jump into the working groups now step by step. 3 working groups that we have. The first one will be on traceability and governance. And we have around about 12 minutes of impulse. And then we're going to do a 8-minute Q&A session. So everybody already make sure you have good questions. Feel free to put your questions here in the chat as well, because we might not answer all the questions that you have. And with this, I would like to hand over to Brian King from the Alliance Biodiversity and CIAT, and John Keogh from McGill University, and we'll also have José Dario Enamorado, Beneficio Rio Frio, Honduras, to share more about their work in traceability and governance. Brian, if you are ready, you're the first to go. Good to have you with us here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Taking control of the deck here, I think, successfully.
Yes.
Can you see the traceability and governance? Okay, excellent. Excuse me. Yes, thank you, Leonard. All right, and how do we advance these? Yes. So I serve as a co-lead or co-coordinator of the Traceability and Governance Working Group with DIASCA. I'm joined by my co-lead, co-facilitator, John Keogh of the McGill University Center for the Convergence of Health and Economics. Today, we thought we might start a bit about kind of, working backwards, as it were, starting with the end in mind. Just this last May, we reached a really a really significant milestone in collaboration with public, private, nonprofit actors in spanning the Honduran coffee value chain. We had a couple of large organizations that buy directly from smallholder farmers called Beneficios, a provider of loan guarantees to banks to try to, with the objective of trying to move more capital and have it be more used in rural and smallholder farmer settings, a traceability company, ourselves, the regulator, or at least the coffee regulatory agency, and so forth. And what we're looking at here is actually the shipment of a container based on everybody's best interpretation of the world, as it stands right now, of deforestation-free coffee. And so I want to talk a bit about how we did this how we reached this particular milestone through a mix of collaborative governance, open technologies, and I think it's fair to say a bias towards action to be able to do this. So I think everybody here will not be surprised to know that the hardest part is getting folks to agree and get on the same page regarding the need to actually build shared solutions. And so the process started over a year ago with essentially a mediation inspired by a really great body of work called the Trust Framework for Digital Food Systems that we've kind of built and localized within the Honduran context, and starting from that consensus to sort of build into co-design, locally driven co-design. I think we'll probably hear about several of the key building blocks today, but they figure into this example as well. So the Asset Registry is an open project hosted and service hosted by the Linux Foundation that enables registry of spatial features, particularly polygons, points and polygons, and then the minting of unique GeoIDs, again, as an open solution that can be integrated with other solutions. WISP, which we'll probably hear about from the forest monitoring group coming up, enables us to get a deforestation risk score by plots on the planet. Inatrace is an open source traceability solution that kind of figured into the interoperability thinking across multiple traceability solutions. And then TerraTrack is a kind of localization of an app put out by the EU Space Program Agency, one of many out in the world that enables in-field registry of points and polygons, even without an internet connection. To that, we connected another company joined the effort, a German company called Perma Robotics joined the effort, all open source, open standard, open learning kind of approach, where we introduced an app that can help kind of connect across those different solutions. And we also introduced some basically near field communication cards. The QR codes on the cards actually point to the polygons of those farmers. And so we're in the process now, and this next phase, that was sort of the proof of concept we saw on the first slide. We're in the phase now where we're looking at how do we connect those, certainly the QR codes, but connect across these different artifacts in the supply chain. Again, permissively licensed open source, open standard stuff with the idea that it can just accelerate and improve the interoperability and interconnectivity across systems around shared problems. So I'll hand over to John to talk about kind of three big kind of theoretical pillars of our work that we've tried to put into practice. The trust framework that we've heard about, and then two others, one around the concept of supply chain integrity, and then a bit around signaling and screening of actors in supply chains and value chains. So over to you, John.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So as you see here on the left-hand side, this is actually an overview of something we've created or elaborated on previous work that was done by the GS1 organization. And it tries to capture some of the big components of building what we call supply chain integrity. Now, if you go deeper into supply chain integrity, we like to think that it has four pillars: people integrity, which is relatively new, product integrity, data integrity, and process integrity. And all of these are built into the actual output of the report that we have. And Brian will show a QR code to that later. But if I go on to the next slide here, see if I can, yeah, that's it in more detail here. On the left-hand side, it's about the authentication. So, and on the right-hand side is the verification. The traceability component is in the middle. It's quite an eye chart for today, but we would welcome feedback on this chart. And as I mentioned, Brian will give a QR code where you can actually download the report. And please have a look at that and give us your feedback. The next one here is on signaling theory. So in simple terms, when you have a supplier who wants to sell something or position something in the marketplace, they will signal their capabilities, their competency, and any qualifications that they typically have. But we can't just rely on that as being truthful. And the reason they do this signaling is because there's a big information asymmetry or an information gap where one party has more information than the other, and the signaling is typically around trying to reduce that gap. So if I go on to then the counter to that, how does a buyer come along and verify the information that's being signaled? So in this context, screening theory is around a counterbalance where the seller discloses the information in screening, and then the buyer actually puts in mechanisms, which could be an on-site audit, it could be different processes that they put in place, like self-selection, where they kind of force or encourage the seller to disclose information that would otherwise be withheld. So with that, I'm going to pass on to Brian, and Brian will talk about just the report and then go into the roadmap. We do have early feedback, by the way, from the work that we're doing, which also includes a survey. And I'm not sure I don't think we have the link to the survey on here, but I will put it into the chat this morning. We have 146 respondents to this survey on how buyers screen their suppliers around the world. We have 146 responses. Unfortunately, we only have 6 from Europe, 1 from 6 different countries, and those 6 countries are responsible for about 80% of the exports. So Brian, over to you.
Thanks, John. So as John mentioned, there's our best attempt at a kind of how-to and much deeper examination of a couple of the theoretical pillars can be found in this report. That QR code is readable, and that's kind of been our point of departure for the work under this technical working group in this current phase. The signaling and screening stuff is current research led by John that we'd love to have folks engage with, and we can elevate the game a bit about how do we foster the kind of human and economic development outcomes that we'd like to see in environmental stewardship that we'd like to see through agriculture supply chain. So apologies for the very busy slide, but we've got several editions of very rich discussion, very rich and very applied discussions on these topics. So looking at from, I can't even see my own thing here. Okay, yes. So starting with, so I have present review here, so it's sometimes hard to see. So, this question around interoperability and what it means for whom, and then how do we actually build it? A very rich discussion for an hour and a half we did in a series of webinars in the working group. Then we looked at complex compliance scenarios, particularly looking at EUDR and how, we've yet to even understand how to address the complexity of things like tracking deforestation-free soy that could then be fed to deforestation-free cattle, which could be sold to a country, sold to then a third country. There's immense complexity that we're all wrangling here, and there are a few providers that represent and describe how they go about doing that. And then we unpack this integrity question, integrity and the signaling aspect question with a really interesting, a very applied panel. And then we look at data agency and privacy as relates to smallholder farmers in great depth as well. So next steps include the prototyping group achievement of Honduras. Hopefully getting that in Kenya, happening in Kenya pretty soon. And then we'll start looking at other countries and other commodities. So I'd like to take a moment and request that looking at this picture, if you could hold up your phone, your QR code reader on your phone, and see a kind of quick little demonstration of what's possible with this open collaboration and open technologies. So that QR code should be readable from the picture. Take a moment and do that. Somebody give a thumbs up if they've actually done that. Okay, so I saw Leonard. Okay, we got a few more thumbs ups. Good. So that's just a really nice, proof of concept illustration of the proof of concept of what's possible with open collaboration and open technologies and open standards. So I will stop there. So I hope Jose Dario was able to make it. Jose Dario Enamorado from Beneficio Rio Frio, one of the organizations that buys directly from smallholder farmers.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot, Brian and John, for the insights. I'm surprised that the QR code actually worked. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? Even if there's one tall guy in the middle standing in front.
Yeah, this one might even work too. The one on the truck, I think, works as well. Yeah, even that one's kind of wrinkled and so on.
Could be
Yes,
easier.
yeah. Yes.
I haven't seen Jose now, but let's open up first, and whenever Jose is here, he can jump in. But really, call to action for everybody in the audience. Your questions for Brian and John. Not, I already have a few on the next steps. There is a question from Osman: which traceability tool is best fitted to developing countries where the level of literacy is low and internet connectivity is a problem?
I think I wouldn't say necessarily what's best, but I would say that there are some strategies that we've learned about how to manage that. So first of all, I think it's really important that we drive down the cost. And then it's really important that we not presume to know the kind of actual form that the product itself will take, So I think the driving down the cost, which itself enables the access to the tools, which I think that these open technology approaches have demonstrated some real promise there. But then it's this kind of direct co-design and engagement. Certain functionalities can work offline. So, for example, there was one tool, and there are several out there, including one from our friends at FAO, that enable registry of polygons. when you're offline, for example. So there are functionalities that work. You don't need to be connected to the internet. But I think what's best is really what's locally designed and governed. Really, and then you would pick solutions that enable that.
Yeah, I would add to that I would add to that briefly that we should never forget in the local context, manual is still a relevant form of traceability. So at the minimum, do the education around when you're passing a product from one party to the other, that's recorded. And once they get that right, then it can be automated later. It's very difficult to automate something to what we call digitalize if you haven't done that first part of getting the analog part right. It seems obvious, but that's really, really very important. In countries and research I've done in countries like Vietnam, they actually have physical farm books where they can record data. So if we get that right, then it's a little bit easier to start talking about technology to digitalize.
And maybe back to the question from Osman, these are the two dimensions, right? The tech dimension, and then when he talks about the level of literacy, so the human dimension involved there as well. And I mean, Brian, you mentioned that there's also low-tech solutions there. Do you expect differences when it comes to adaptation and replication in different countries, different areas, especially on the human dimension, or more on the tech part?
I think there are cross-cutting themes, so but they'll have different. There are cross-cutting themes. The value chains themselves will have different structures, and there could any number of other socioeconomic factors that drive into things like, you know, access to technology or familiarity or use of technology. So I think we have to be ready to, you know, capture and build towards what we know there are in, you know, the cross-cutting themes, the commonalities, but also be ready to be configurable and adaptable by context. And so, you know, we're not presuming that what was achieved in Kenya will look exactly, in Honduras will look exactly the same in Kenya. However, the groups that were working there, you know, see the relevance of the technology approach and that it could be an interesting jumping off point. So, you know, the one thing about it's the solution set in Honduras, just briefly. So there were these cards that were issued, and those were issued from the beneficios that buy directly from the farmers. And so there's a trusted relationship between those buyers and those farmers. And the card itself is the point where consent. It's like, know that if I'm gonna issue a card, me as a buyer of your coffee farmer, know that when we use this card to track things, the data associated with this lot of coffee is going to be visible by those who need to see it to be able to commercialize the coffee. And so in terms of the kind of engagement with the farmers, all they really need is that physical card in that particular case. But again, you know, how you design in an appropriate way, and then how you manage the trusted kind of within the trusted relationships to even, you know, get to that point, I guess is pretty key.
John, you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, just a quick point. You know, depending on the country, the status of their development, it's important not that we conceptualize, you know, a whole bunch of farmers going into a classroom. We have to break that down and look at what is the local capability, what is the local geography, what are the demographics there. In a lot of cases, we may have 80% of the laborers are women. In a lot of cases, in a lot of countries, the majority of farmers are over 60. The net is you really have to get out onto the farms and bring the extension services, the education, the capacity building to where the work is being done, rather than always assume that we have a classroom to bring all of the people into. And I think that's important to get it down to that level.
Yeah, thank you very much for these insights. It will be interesting to, in the coming month and maybe also next year, observe how the lessons learned from Honduras, Kenya, and other countries are similar. Where you have that common red thread, right? And where do you have to do this adaptation to the local context, local capabilities? There are more questions coming in the chat, but I would say we have quite a few topics. So I hope you don't mind if we go back to back into living income now. But John and Brian, please take a look because there's quite some engagement. And yeah, it would be great if you can reply also in the chat. That would be much appreciated.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. So we go back to back and we from traceability go into living income. Jessica Mullen from COSA. Jessica, you gonna share with us recent updates. We get the slides ready in a second. You take control.
They're coming. Thanks, Leonard. I will take control here. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I think we're good.
Over to you.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Mullen from COSA, the Committee on Sustainability Assessment, and we're an NGO that works in the sustainability measurement space. You've probably come in to contact us in a number of different ways over the course of the last couple of years in this DIASCA project. I'm leading the Farmer Income Working Group, and today we wanted to tell you about some of the progress we've had around farmer incomes in this digital interoperability and standardization space. I think Pascal did a really nice job laying out why we're doing this work. I think the two things I would add for this group in particular is the CS3D regulation. We definitely recognize we are operating in the living income space under the banner of new regulation that does look at environmental aspects and income. And so guidance really was missing about how to pick up this new concept and make it actionable in supply chains. And so there is a focus here on how to embed regulatory requirements and then also just to look at how programs are doing where farmer income and livelihoods are involved. So that's really the spearheading concept behind this group. Last year, in the last 2 years, the income group was tackling the actual concept of actual income and cost of production, and a resulting technical guidance document was the result, which you can see on the DIASCA website. These are the folks that participated. And so the focus in this, and so I guess I should step back for a second. In that working group, we really unpacked farmer income. What are all the different component parts? What are all the different indicators and metrics and the methods for actually calculating it? And so we broke farmer income into all of these distinct pieces, and then expanded each one into all of these different details. Like, how do you actually work with this indicator? What's it benchmarked to? How do we apply it on the field? What are its limitations? How do we actually measure it? And all of this is explained in the guidance document that's on the DIASCA website for just how to calculate farmer income and cost of production. So that resource already exists. In this most recent year, we've taken that concept and now we're adding this living income piece. So we went from actual income of a producer to moving it towards living income, which requires some additional steps and process points. And so the group has convened in the last several months towards a new guidance document, which we'll show you in a minute. But just to give you a sense of what's happening under the hood in this recent engagement, we've been working with some of our friends and partners across a variety of organizations. These are the heavy hitters in the income space. And so a note to say that this work has built upon some of the existing guidance that's already out there. So this is not a brand new, piece of work created in a vacuum. We really are leveraging a bunch of agreed upon methods and metrics in this space, but packaging it in a really actionable way for folks to pick up and use in projects in their supply chains. The living income concept basically says that, while we were looking at the actual income of a producer related to the focus crop, whether, it could be anything, coffee, cocoa, tea, beef, or like oranges, this is crop agnostic and geography agnostic. And to get from the income of that focus crop to living income, which is, what is the cost of a basic and decent standard of living? So things like housing, education, medical care, what does it take to get us from that focus crop income to that broader concept? And so we have to kind of expand the actual income work into a variety of different places, which I'll unpack for you right here. And so basically, we've now taken our old farm economic model here, which gets us to actual income, and we've placed in 2 new indicators, which look at a benchmark, and then how to use that benchmark relative to the actual net household income. So there's like some additional steps and methodological pieces that we have to pull apart so that we can provide really actionable guidance to the members of this group. What that meant is that we had to dig into some new specifications. These next 3 slides are really for the income and economics nerds among us, about like what are the actual functional changes in here. And we had to make a couple to the old framework to bring it in line with living income. So things about the composition of a household. What do we do when people are eating some of the crops that they produce? So maybe they're not buying food from like a market. So how do we like work with those economics? How do we expand this to look at things beyond just the focus crop, but other pieces of household income? When somebody works, at a different place or has a different crop or product that they sell. So all of those concepts had to be merged into this current guidance document. We also go through all of the components of how to actually find and utilize a benchmark. So there is work out there where in different countries and different contexts, the living income has already been established. And so the appropriate place to find those and bring those pieces of work in here are also detailed in our next guidance document, as well as any modifications that need to be made. And then finally, I know I'm giving you the like really quick version of all of this. But finally, the equation for how to take the benchmark in the household income and put that together and report out in a standardized way. I think that's probably the most important part of this working group. And so, yes, we did like a really high level view of everything that happened in this within this working group community. But basically, the main point here is that you can find both of these things, like everything that I just explained, in both of the documents that I've now put on the screen that will be available to the community in the next couple of weeks. On the right-hand side, we have the actual guidance document, which unpacks all of those components and more into all of their relevant pieces and how to pick it up and apply using different all the different indicator options and methodologies and standardized reporting features. So that exists. And then on the left-hand side, we've also come up with an issue brief that looks at living income and data standardization in the universe of CS3D regulations. So how do we make sense of this thing in the broader environment that we're living in today? And so both of those resources are outcomes of this very technical working group focused on, all things monetary, which, can be thorny, and there's a lot of details under the hood. So that's what we've been up to over here. Happy to field questions and point folks to the resources that already exist. It's a lot, but we've packaged it in a way where you really can look at the section. We've really tried to modularize it so you can interact with different pieces and then look at how it all fits together as a whole. So hopefully that helped folks in here. I think that's it from my side, and I can try to field questions here on the right, or I don't know if folks have, there you go. Feel free to write questions to Jessica. Yeah,
Thanks,
so if any
Jessica.
questions, happy to do that now or later.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. We have some time for that now. Thanks for the call to action. So everybody, this is your chance for questions. Also feel free to raise your hand and speak up, or put your questions in the chat here for Jessica. While we're waiting for some questions, I might just want to get started. I mean, Jessica, first of all, thanks a lot for taking us through the journey, also how that developed from farmer income to living income over the course of time. You said there you've done a lot of benchmarking. There's a lot of work out there. My question is, how do you then disseminate these results in your work, also into all the other areas out there that have been working in the field of living income? And maybe second link to that, how do we actually make sure that this and the principles get implemented? Have you thought about that? Has that been a subject to discussion?
Yeah, well, and I guess I should, before we even answer your question too, just say that if you are in this meeting and you're interested in this topic, feel free to join this working group. It's a very active and lively group, and we're in this next phase of work, moving into additional concepts around like livelihoods and prosperous income. So there's like more to come on the income journey. Yeah, so there's like a really I would say the living income community of practice is sort of the hub of most of the information that's out there. And we have a very direct relationship with them and the guidance documents that they've developed through different institutions. COSA's been a part of them, different research partners. And so we're a part of that community. And I think that, and so we're embedded in sort of like a bigger task force working on same issues. And yet this very like practical guidance on how to do the standardized measurement is something that hasn't, I don't know, I haven't seen it. There's like pieces of it living in different places. So I think this is one of the first places where this like overarching guidance falls into one place. And so by virtue of being part of the other communities that are active on this, I think folks were really missing the actionable like steps on how to do it. And so we have a lot of buy-in from the larger community. Nothing in here is, different or distinct. And so it's just more of like putting it together and harmonizing it in one place. So I'm excited to see where this goes from here. I hope that sort of answers the question. And if anybody's interested on the DIASCA site, you can sign up for the working group in there.
Yeah, thanks. That's the second call for action then, right? To join
Yeah.
the working group. And also within the working group, I think that's important, jointly also define the direction, right? And you said you're curious what the direction will be. So that will be up to the members of the working group to jointly decide on the direction they want to head to.
Yep, you bet.
There's a question in the chat from Osman. How can we determine a living income of farmers in a group farming model? And what analysis model is best to calculate farmers' living income?
Yeah, well, and so we walk through like different options and their approaches and disadvantages in the guidance document. So I think that's been one piece that's really nice here is sort of coalescing around common approaches, but leaving flexibility for where different circumstances might encourage, encourage you to like take a different path. And so that we don't set out, and I think that's one reason why this work has had the traction that it's had, is because we don't say there is one way to do it. We say there's a standardized way to report on it, and you can get here. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, sort of, with parameters. You have to specify the decision points along the route. And so you are free to make choices that reflect the reality that you're living in, and also are responsible for falling within certain parameters and documenting those parameters in a standardized way so that we know where pieces, like may drift or veer from normal thing. And so I think that piece is one of the hallmarks of what we've put together, is less of like, this is how you must do it. Instead, like, here are choices you have and why they might make sense, and you have to tell us, like, you have to document decision points along the way. And I do see other questions about like determining living income. We offer some, I mean, probably can't get into all that right now, but we do offer guidance around different benchmarks, how those are established, why you might choose one approach over another, and then like what you might do with living income when you get it, and how you might report on it or utilize that data for the best value, like different ways of looking at it. So it's actually actionable for you as a company, or a exporter, or where whoever you are in the value chain. There's a lot of different ways of cutting data so that you can actually get value from it. And so we offer guidelines around that piece too, even though that's not specifically under the parameters of this work.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, Jessica, you're referring to the questions that are coming here from Raymond and Dina. They're also going in the direction, right, into does the benchmark put mechanisms in place to transition farmers from impoverishment to prosperity? How does the sector now move from measurement to action? So that's something you partly addressed, but it seems to be a big topic for the way forward. So
come on into the group, my friend. Yeah, well,
that's an easy answer. Just come into the group. No, but it's important to identify also what are the important questions for the next steps. Maybe Jessica, also here, you take a look in the chat, more questions, and maybe we elaborate on that. You provide some answers, and I see Brian and John already have and sharing more good insights. Jonas as well. Thanks everybody for being active here in the chat as well. And I would say we go back to the next topic. Jessica, thanks a lot for sharing the insights. We'll see you later in the breakout sessions. So we go to forest monitoring and geodata. Güte Feddersen from GIZ and Jonas Becker from FAO. Both good to have you with us. Güte, you want to start first, right? You want to take control whenever you're ready. The stage is yours.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Güte. I work at GIZ at the SAFE team, Sustainable Agriculture for Forest Ecosystems. And so the SAFE team is actually one of the flagship projects under the Team Europe Initiative for Zero Deforestation. And within the TEI, we are working on digital public infrastructure and have been working on it for quite a while in collaboration with DIASCA. So happy to present what we've been doing so far. Maybe just a quick background on the TEI. So the TEI, the Team Europe Initiative for Zero Deforestation, is a global project by the EU and its member states, and it's part of the Global Gateway Initiative and the EU's Green Deal to foster zero deforestation and foster EUDR compliance, but also to bring together stakeholders and foster inclusive partnerships. And among the very many topics that we work on, we also work on digital public infrastructure. So we work together with our partners, FAO, the International Trade Center, the World Resources Institute, and also the Linux Foundation to create open access digital tools, interoperable tools, to foster zero deforestation. So we're looking at field boundary mapping, forest monitoring tools, but also traceability systems. And just a few updates on what we've been doing this year. So a lot of times when we talk to stakeholders, to partners, there's still some unclarity of what the concept of DPI actually means and what it encounters. So we've been doing a lot of talking to stakeholders, attending different events, and just presenting on what we are planning to do with digital public infrastructure and who we are working with, what it actually, why we are so convinced of this concept, creating fact sheets and videos, and just doing some basic knowledge sharing and knowledge dissemination. You can see at the bottom a few of the events that we and also our partners have attended, and just spread the message on DPI. And this is also like a call for action. If you know of any events that are happening that could be interesting, where we can just further share the concept of DPI, let us know. And besides that, we are also working on concrete building blocks to building this digital public infrastructure. One of the projects that we're working with, or one of the partners, is, as mentioned, the FAO. It's under the Aim for Commodities project. It's a BMZ-funded project that runs for 18 months and with a budget of $1.4 million. And some of these building blocks you've already seen in the previous presentation. So we're looking at building this entire infrastructure, and these building blocks or prototypes form the basis of this. So we're looking at geolocation mapping, for example, through the Open Forest Ground tool, but also creating unique geo-IDs through the XTAX asset registry, or deforestation risk analysis like the FAO's WISP tool, and also INATRACE for interoperability. So I will not go into detail with this, but I will actually hand over to Jonas from FAO, who can present us more detail on what has been going on with these different building blocks. Over to you, Jonas. You're muted, Jonas.
Here I am. Thank you, Güte. So one of those DPI building blocks that Güte just talked about is the geolocation tool Open Forest Ground. Most of you in this call will have heard about it already, or so I hope. So I will not go into detail on this, but if you want to see how it works, please click the link to our ground webinar from March this year. Let me only announce that we have a self-paced e-learning course that will soon be released, so stay tuned on that. Furthermore, on ground, we saw some data collection campaigns happening recently. For example, this one in collaboration with Surges in Ghana, which produced some 20,000 polygons of cocoa plots. We equally saw adoption of ground for a field geolocation campaign by the International Trade Center, ITC. For more news on that, please click on the link here. Two of the responsibles of these two projects I saw are also in this call. That's Jacob Abramovitz and let me see, and Gregory Sampson is also here. Great. Moving forward. We would also like to extend our thanks to the International Trade Center and the team of Gregory Sampson for some very professional video tutorials on ground that were created with the recording from our DIASCA webinar in March. Please find the English and French tutorial playlist under the links here. Furthermore, geometries that are collected with ground now automatically get analyzed through WISP, as well the information is going to be visible in the Ground web console. The Ground Android app is now available in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Vietnamese, depending on the language that is the default language on your phone. And overall, Ground has become more stable and has a better user experience to offer now. Next on the list, the above-mentioned anonymous cocoa data from the Search campaign in Ghana could also be used for a cocoa probability model created by Google developers under the Forest Data Partnership. The datasets can already be accessed through Google Earth Engine, but please use them carefully as they are not peer-reviewed yet. As Gude mentioned, there's also our deforestation risk assessment solution, OpenForest WISP. While I do show the WISP logic and the decision tree here, I do not really have the time to run you through it today. So if you want to understand better how WISP works, please consult our WISP GitHub page. For that, please click the link here, where you can find an in-depth explanation of this decision tree. I have also explained it in last week's DIASCA webinar, the recording of which should be available on YouTube in a few days, or if it is actually available already from the GIZ team, maybe you can post it in the chat right now if you have it. Otherwise, stay tuned, please. Our map visualization tool, WISP Earth Map, has also multiple new data sets that you can check right from your browser. Just click this link to get there. You should be able to click it right here. Within WISP Earth Map, the WISP analysis results can now furthermore be interpreted through Gemini AI to be better understandable. It's this button here in the red square. While WISP until now has been a great tool for deforestation risk assessments around perennial crops like cocoa, coffee, rubber, and oil palm, we have recently added some layers that also help to distinguish risk for annual crops, the EUDR relevant of which is soy. And we are proud to announce that we have developed a specialized decision tree for timber now. This is the decision tree, no time to go into it right now, but also refer to our GitHub page to find more information on that. When you run your polygons through the WISP API now, you will now get 3 different risk categories. It's risk P crop for the perennial crops, risk A crop, and risk timber for annual crops, and timber for timber, obviously, at the very end of the table. WISP API, furthermore, now has an API key implementation. You can currently still use it without registration and API through the website, but we would like to ask you to please register. And that way we can finally get some disaggregated use statistics, which will also help us to make WISP better for you and to scale it up. And then finally, on WISP, we now have our QGIS WISP plugin, which is up in the QGIS repository. You can now simply do the WISP analysis on your geometries right from QGIS. Please note that it is not running the decision trees within QGIS, but it simply connects to the WISP API for the analysis. Not to forget about the asset registry. You probably still know about the asset registry or GeoID registry from our last roundtables. So just very short, when creating a new geometry, it can be sent by API to the asset registry to get a unique identifier and return the GeoID, which can be shared through the value chain much more simply than actual shapefiles or GeoJSONs. It is designed to be GDSP compliant so that only those who have received the GeoID can access it, while nobody can do a metadata search like, for example, give me all coffee plots in Kiambu, Kenya or so. That doesn't work. Only who has the GeoID can access the geometry. The important update on the GeoID registry is that we are working now on hosting it at FAO as a global fallback. while we keep encouraging countries to set up their own instances nationally. In Kenya, for example, we're discussing with the Kenya Coffee Directorate, which is well positioned to host a Kenyan GeoID registry. The global fallback registry at FAO is a work in progress, and the modalities remain to be specified, so stay tuned. Now let's have a look at FAO's activities under the Aim for Commodities project that Güte earlier mentioned. Within this project, FAO focuses on 3 work streams that are closely aligned with the building blocks of digital public infrastructure. Those are further development of the WISP deforestation risk assessment application and integration of national mapping resources for improved risk assessments. Next, upscaling geolocation efforts in the field through top-down and bottom-up approaches, notably employing the Open Forest Ground application for field data collection, but we're also investigating possibilities of automated field boundary detection, which is, though, admittedly very difficult in the coffee sector, especially, or in the cocoa sector, because it's a lot of very small fields, often with agroforestry. So we're trying, but let's not put too much emphasis on that. We are then also fostering the implementation of a decentralized GeoID asset registry that is owned by the countries and that provides the actors dealing with EUDR or other mechanisms with a standardized geometry format that is easy to use, easy to integrate, and that simplifies geolocation information sharing along the traceability chains. In order to achieve these goals, all 3 work streams will be flanked by efforts to bring relevant actors together, developing of training materials, such as the e-learning course, which is about to be released soon. We're conducting capacity building missions, and we're, of course, investing in further development of digital public infrastructure solutions. The focus countries within the Aim for Commodities projects are Colombia, Kenya, Laos, and Vietnam. We have started our activities in 3 of those 4 countries with the following scoping missions. We had one in April on the cocoa sector in Colombia. If you want to see the web story on that, please just click right here. It should be clickable from your screen. I myself was happy to conduct a scoping mission for the coffee sector in May 2025. I was in Kenya for that. And colleagues have also been to Vietnam for the coffee and rubber sector. What we did there was national workshops on digital public infrastructure in general. We conducted some trainings on ground in cooperatives. We had discussions on digital public infrastructure implementation in general with key stakeholders to encourage them to implement, for example, their own national maps in WISP, to use ground for plot geolocation. We also made them aware of INATRACE. And well, also we were working on finding potential candidates for hosting a national GeoID registry. We have updated work plans for all 3 and also hired a national consultant already for Colombia and are working on hiring one for both Vietnam and Kenya as we speak. Now, almost done here. Let me remind you of our DIASCA webinars series again. So this is a webinar where we give the floor to a producing country actor to share their successes, challenges, and support needs in light of zero deforestation regulations. After the producing country input, we take a deep dive into one building block of DPI and finally have a discussion where everybody who is present can participate. The first webinar was not recorded, but the second one on Open Forest Ground was. Shared the link already earlier, but you can still click it here, 3rd time. And we also had the 3rd webinar with the country input from Nigeria and the technical deep dive on WISP last week, but the recording remains to be shared. And with that, Yeah, and lastly, there's also an update to the forest monitoring paper that has been pushed a lot by our dear colleague Matthew Himmel from COSA, who's also in the call. That one's going to incorporate updated EUDR FAQs and some new guidance from leading experts and organizations. There's a new section on compliance with local laws and some actionable workflows for operators and traders. And that will be released later this summer. Matthew wants to say more about that. He's going to host the next section anyway, so happy to hand over to you. If there are any questions, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guido. Thank you very much, Jonas. That was almost the spoiler for the next slot, Matthew. Yes, but before Matthew, I mean, still the opportunity for everybody to ask questions. Either put your questions in the chat or, yeah, speak up here. Just for me on the next steps, maybe just in the meantime, you said 2 more slots in 2025 on the webinar. Already date fixed to know when the next one will be?
So usually we conduct them every 2 months, but there has been a little bit of a break between the second and the third one because of all our country missions. So we're looking at the next one in 2 months.
Okay. So after the summer break. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's give everybody a second to see if there's questions. If you don't have any questions now, don't, how can an agency join the forest monitoring group? I mean, you have the contact infos there, right? And just reach out, and then probably individually it makes sense to check how that makes sense. Maybe here's an interesting question, Stefan. For a month, it has been rumored that Indonesia prohibits by law the sharing of geolocation data. Is that a government position that has been officially communicated? Is this still the case, or have there been any developments?
I cannot speak on the behalf of Indonesia.
Okay.
I will take this up in the group, but I cannot give you an answer on that because I'm obviously not Indonesian.
Then Osman, okay, that's good to park that question then, Stefano. So we'll figure out. Osman, in forest monitoring, what are the key data to capture that are in compliance with best practices? Key data that you capture.
I do not fully get the question. So, I mean, generally speaking, the key data that you want to capture are the geolocations, first of all, which I remember speaking with, so Mr. Kagbo, I already saw you were sitting together in a room with Raymond Cutter. I know a huge problem in Sierra Leone currently is the geolocation. So that is the #1 most important thing at the moment. Everything else comes second.
Okay.
I also saw a question earlier by Mr. Kagbo. Please just write to my email address. I'm just going to send it here again so we can indeed give you some more information on employing open forest ground, for example, or pointing at INATRACE at how you can best employ that for the Sierra Leonean sector.
Yeah, thanks a lot to both of you. If there are small questions, please put them in the chat, and Jonas and Peter, you will take a look, and happy to reply. You already mentioned Matthew Himmel from COSA. Matthew, over to you. We're going to do a little bit of a snapshot into data models. So, Matthew, you want to take control whenever you're ready. The stage is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for the introduction, Leonard, and Jonas. Thank you for mentioning the updates to the forest monitoring paper that will be released later this summer. And I should say, again, I work with the Committee on Sustainability Assessment, but this paper very much is a collaborative effort. We're leading the working group with the FAO and GIZ and a vast network of experts who both contributed to the initial working paper, who have been active in this revised paper. And for those of you who have not yet in the expert working group have not seen the second update, we'll be in touch with you shortly. And for the rest of the community, this will be released later this summer. So you've heard a little bit about from my colleague Jessica. So COSA, the Committee on Sustainability Assessment, obviously we're involved in the forest monitoring working group. Jessica mentioned the work that we're leading with the farm income group, and there's a third a category that I want to talk about today, which is kind of broadly speaking assets in the structural camp. So we'll talk a little bit about both data model and a data exchange template, which are just the first two of those elements. Am I? Yeah, okay, great. Here we go. So the data exchange templates and the data model. So we've heard kind of today about how DIASCA, broadly speaking, is supporting, coordinating, and creating a whole host of assets. We've heard about digital public infrastructure. Pascal kind of opened with that. We've heard examples of that digital public infrastructure in the asset registry that's been employed by the work that Brian and John conducted in Honduras, and that is part of that tool stack that Jonas just presented on. So kind of DPI for those that are building tool stacks. We've also heard a host of ready-to-use tools for those of you who are simply looking, friends in Sierra Leone and in Guatemala, who are simply looking for tools right off the shelf that you can begin collecting geolocations, beginning to do traceability, for example. So we heard a number of those in Jonas's presentation, from ground for collecting those geolocations to WISP to doing that. To doing the remote sensing for deforestation. We've also heard about how DIASCA is generating knowledge and reports. Great example, my colleague Jessica, the report on farm income. So these are all assets that DIASCA is helping coordinate and in many cases creating for the community. And I want to talk about this fourth class, which you'll see more developed in this space, which is really around structural elements. And these are just two of examples, this data exchange template and the data model, but there will be more to come in the future. So what is a data exchange template and why is it needed? Well, those of you who are dealing with EUDR know that the EU information system has essentially already created a de facto standard for how we transmit a lot of data between us. You know, many of us probably were not talking about GeoJSONs 2 years ago, and now we are. And GeoJSON and the specific template that the EU information systems receive that data in has essentially standardized how data like country of origin, regions, especially geolocations, plot area, and a host of other data that gets reported into the EUIS, how that gets transmitted between organizations, right, in the value chain. But there's a lot of data from our work directly with operators and traders and other members of the value chain. We know that there's a lot of other data that needs to be transmitted that for which there is no standard template. So if you're an operator, you'll need a lot more data to do your due diligence than you'll necessarily report into the EU information system. And some of that might include informations about this, contract numbers, so you can tie out information around shipments to your own internal traceability systems. You would need information about risks of violations of the relevant legislation in countries, and that's part of the regulation, but not something that you report into the EU information system. In many cases, to do your due diligence, you would want to understand what sort of remote sensing and what sort of ground truthing has been done by other members of the supply chain, and what were the findings? When were those analyses conducted? What tools were used? Who actually implemented them? If you're doing ground truthing, who was the implementing party, and was there any conflicts of interest, et cetera? Are there legal provisions, et cetera? So there's a whole host of data that an operator who's conducting the necessary due diligence needs to receive from their value chain partners, for which there is no global standard for transmitting that data. So that's why we are pulling together a data exchange template that is in a GeoJSON. It is essentially an augmented version of the GeoJSON that we are all already using to transmit the data necessary for EUDR. So we will be, this will be released later this summer with an overview on its use and its purpose, the template itself, and a Python library to help validate polygons, et cetera, for those of you who are implementing data systems. So that's the first sort of structural asset that we'll be releasing through DIASCA later this summer. The second is a data model. And so, you know, just having seen that poll that many of you are coming from NGOs, I know that we have representatives from producing countries, et cetera. The concept of a data model may actually be a little bit abstract to many folks on the call. Essentially, a data model is a blueprint or representation of how data is structured and organized within a database or an information system. And this is what it looks like when you kind of diagram it out. And before everyone sort of tunes out and says, this isn't for me, this is too technical, this isn't relevant, let's talk about who actually would need a data model. If you're a representative from a producing country, this could be very relevant to you. We know from the Team Europe Initiative event that was hosted in Kampala that there are a number of countries in Africa and across the world that are producing their own or generating their own data repositories for the plots in their country. If you're creating a system, then a data model is for you. If you're a producer group and you're tasked with creating a repository of all the producers and their plots, then a data model is relevant to you. If you're one of those traders, an exporter or an importer who's handling this data, and certainly an operator, including brands and retailers, that's important to you. Why? Because a data model will help you understand how you might structure plots and traceability data, how you would collate the deforestation and the legality data that you'll likely be receiving from various partners in the supply chain. It could help you track other data in the future. We're very focused on EUDR at the moment, but as Lars mentioned at the beginning, we will at some point get past EUDR and start looking at exploring other topics like carbon, et cetera. If you want to begin tracking the data that Jessica was mentioning about farm income or other performance about your farmers, yields, food security, et cetera, you need a data model. And if you're an NGO, and I know that there's a lot of NGOs on this call, if you're an NGO or you're an implementing partner or you're a foundation or you're an impact investor who's making investments in projects at origin, and you want to understand, first of all, you want to track those engagements for reporting. You want to track the outcomes and the impacts, and you want to understand where those engagements and where those investments are actually having the intended impact and where you're getting the best ROI, the most impact for the investment. Then having a data model is essential to do that analysis. So I'd like to share a kind of a brief analogy. I love kind of analogies for describing technical concepts. So if you imagine that you had a plot of land and you were going to develop a farm on it, and you were trying to think where you're going to place your farm or where you're going to place your house, you might be tempted at the outset to simply place the house in the center of your farm. But if you actually had a plan for your broader vision over time, and you knew that you wanted to have a cocoa block, and you knew that you wanted to have a plot for coffee, and you needed to have an access road, you wanted to have a garden, because you're involved in these agricultural activities, you needed some outbuildings, a barn, for example. You needed some worker housing, maybe some guest houses. You needed a pond. You might realize that actually the optimal place to put your house was not right in the middle of the farm, but actually up in the northern part there. So this analogy is to kind of suggest that even if you're starting simple, even if you're simply creating a data repository right now just to store plot information from your producers, having a data model in mind for where you might want to go into the future, if you want to start looking at farm income in the future, having that data model in mind from the outset can avoid a lot of rework and pain and really allow you that extensibility. And so in this analogy, each of the elements of the farm, the cocoa block, the coffee block, each of the buildings, those are sort of akin to tables in a database. And this sort of the access roads, if you will, in this loose analogy would be sort of the relationships between those tables. So we will be releasing the data model and a whole host of support documentation around that at the end of the summer through DIASCA. So it'll have an overview that again explains in layman's terms for non-technical folks what the data model is and why it's important. We'll provide the diagram that kind of shows the relationships of those tables, an SQL data definition language script, which is something you can hand to your technical teams, and they could simply, if you wanted to use the data model exactly as we're offering it, you could run that script and it would create all of those tables for you in an SQL database. Although you're absolutely free to take this as a suggestion and modify it. We'll provide detailed specifications with validation rules, and we'll also provide a Python library that enforces the recommended validations between those tables. So stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for the update, for walking us through the data model. Everybody put on the glasses to see all the details in the big model, but you explained very well why and for whom that is important. Matthew, we're going back to back, and we have 2 more short snapshots before we go into the breakout sessions and the group work. And for this, my pleasure to hand over to Laura Barish from the World Resources Institute to tell us more about how to join forces with the Forest Data Partnership. Laura, if you're here with us, over to you once you're ready. And we probably wait, change your status, make presenter. Here we go.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me here today. And this has been a really fascinating conversation. It's great to hear the updates from all the different aspects of DIASCA. I'm here today to talk about the Forest Data Partnership and kind of our next phase of the partnership. I think many of you on this call might be familiar with the partnership, but just to kind of refresh people's memories on what it was, we started in 2021 with funding from USAID and State Department. And it was co-led between WRI and FAO with founding members from Google, Unilever, the NASA Severe Network, and the Spatial Informatics Group. And we actually coalesced around similar principles to DIASCA about aligning and harmonizing work together. And we've really evolved hand in hand with DIASCA over the course of the past 2.5 years now that we've been working really closely together. So I think most of you are aware of the situation in the US, and our USAID funding has now ended quite abruptly. And so we're seeing that as kind of the end of the phase 1 of Forest Data Partnership. And now we're transitioning into a more disaggregated alliance for phase 2, where we're continuing our work on forest monitoring and continuing to lead the forest monitoring group, all the work that's happening under Google that you heard from those different commodity maps, and the excellent work that FAO is leading from that perspective is continuing, and we're very happy to see that happening. In addition, the Forest Data Partnership has been working really closely on data standards and governance, and we've worked closely with FAO and now DIASCA on that. So all of this work is really well aligned. And basically what I want to say is that the Forest Data Partnership is staying together. You'll still hear the name and the brand as the partnership, but most of our work is really falling under all of these different umbrellas of the DIASCA Alliance. So I see us being much more coalesced and strongly together. And I think we are very excited to see what this next phase of work is going to produce, and particularly excited about the different consortiums of partnerships that are developing for fundraising. So I just want to reiterate that us as a partner in that, and that WRI is still very much connected and invested in this partnership from our staffing perspective. So I'm still here as the kind of de facto director, but really it's you'll see Ann Rosenbarger, who's been participating a lot in our data standards work with FAO. And then Sophia Tenorio Fenton has been helping a lot with our engagement. And you'll see Ben Vilgos from the data side participating in the monitoring group and helping with all of that from the data monitoring side. So just to say, I'm excited to continue this work, and DIASCA has been an excellent alliance and partner, and we're excited to continue working with you guys in the future. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Good having you with us here at the round table, and looking forward to the next steps. As I said, now we have one more final snapshot, and my pleasure to give the stage to Bogdan Boliga, talking about smallholders data governance. Bogdan is from Preferred by Nature. Bogdan, if you're ready, stage is all yours.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Can I also move the slides, or you'll move the slides? Okay, perfect. So I'm Bogdan Boliga from Preferred by Nature, and we have a project with FAO related to the smallholders data governance. And practically, this project raised by the fact that, as previously mentioned during this meeting, that there are a lot of increasing looking at the production plot data, and a lot of them are from the smallholders, which usually are lack of control or understanding how the data is collected, used, and how to protect them. We would like also to understand a bit more that asymmetry and power imbalance into that. So we are trying to look into the good practices which are related to the smallholders governance, data governance thing. And we are trying to look into the geolocation, but also related to other types of data which are collected. And at the same time, we are trying to look at all those research which are already made into this kind of field, and also to engage with stakeholders in order to understand better the topic, the good practices, and to make into the end some conclusion related to what could be done in a better way in terms of managing the data from the smallholders. And we are planning to do that through desk research, stakeholders interviews, and we have also 5 case studies which we have chosen for this project. And if you wish to be part of that, you have there also a QR code that you could scan, and it will be a link to a survey that you could open and give feedback related to the smallholder governance. But at the same time, in case that you would like to be more engaged with this and to be more involved, please feel free to contact me, and we could set up a call or to discuss more about this project or about the data governance for the smallholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bogdan, for sharing the insights. Maybe also the link to the survey we can put in the chat here as well, right?
Yes.
So everybody can access this. Thank you very much. So thanks to all of you for sharing the updates on the working groups and our different topics, the data model, more about the Forest Data Partnership, right? And now from Bogdan. Now we have time for breakout sessions. And how we do this, we give you 30 minutes where we'll put you into breakout groups again. So we will have 3 breakout groups in parallel, so roughly 10 people per group. And we are gonna talk about focus areas, what are the main topics and could be the main topics for the next phase of DIASCA. We want to talk about activities, but we want also you to reflect on the role that you as a stakeholder will have within the next phase of DIASCA and where there are potential gaps and how to overcome them. So that's quite a lot of work for you in the next 30 minutes. Let's make this interactive. You're in good hands with our workshop group leads, let's say. And in 30 minutes, we come back here on the big stage, do a final round of exchange. So the breakout groups will open again in a few seconds. You can then directly join it and you will be assigned to them in 10 seconds. And I'll see you later here. Enjoy and have a good, productive working session. Right. That was a cut from the working groups, everybody. I mean, we gave you 30 minutes. I hope you're not surprised now to be back on the big stage. Because right now what we will be doing, I mean, we gave you that 30 minutes in the breakout sessions to discuss about these topics of the focus areas of DIASCA, of the activities, right, and the way forward. I would love to continue the conversation now here in the bigger group and kind of compile a little bit the infos and ask the workshop host maybe a few questions. Liam Brody from COSA. Liam, we haven't heard you on the big stage yet, so I would give the word to you. Maybe a few insights on the focus areas. Is that something where you generated some good things? I know you also discussed on the activities, but maybe we start with the focus areas and then see what the other groups have, if they have something similar or something different.
Absolutely, happy to. Hello, everyone. Great to see, or at least imagine what you look like with video off and some technology challenges. But this has been a really rich conversation, as it always is, on our roundtables and in our working groups. I would say there were a few things that came up in our conversation. One, just about some thematic areas that are missing. There was conversation about carbon and net zero for sure. And a need to at least discuss where we overlay, especially because some of the tools are overlaid. And I thought that was an interesting perspective, that as we're looking at Earth observation, geospectral analysis, other types of things, recognizing that there's an overlap in deployment. And that came up also thinking about, how are we using these tools to collect as much data or information as possible? Particularly beyond what the intentional use case might have been. And so there was a conversation also about how this relates to labor and other aspects of supply chain transparency and traceability. There was a conversation about missing a focus on the blue sector, on seafood, both farmed and fresh caught, and needing to standardize there. There was some interest in really trying to go back to some basics. There have been some folks that have been part of this conversation for the last 2 years, and some folks that are newer. Thanks so much, Leonard. I think everybody is muted at one time. There was a conversation about where we come into this conversation and a reorientation. I think many of us came into this conversation about interoperability, and some coming into digital public infrastructure, not realizing this was a conversation we've been having with different language for some time, not realizing the challenges that we brought into the DIASCA community were ones that were overlapping. And so there is also recognition that many are now coming in on a similar journey, and what can we do to make it easier for them to see themselves and where they should focus their energy. And so if you're coming in from a farmer perspective or a farmer leader perspective, how do you engage? What's in it for you, and where can you fit into this work? And I think there was a recognition that some of this is a learning perspective. Where are all the tools and the learning that can be shared with you? And then where are the places that you might roll up your sleeves beyond learning and contribute, but that orientation per sector or per archetype, different for some private sector players, different for technology or service providers, different for governments, perhaps different for researchers or farmer organizations and even civil society. And then I'd say that there was an interesting conversation about how organizations at the table can contribute. There was a great conversation from our friend Elizabeth with ISEAL. ISEAL's working on a core metadata set and was talking about how do we work together to cross-collaborate on tools like that in response to, in some ways, the data model that Matthew shared and some of the other standardization work that was been done. And then I'd say maybe just two final things. One, better data governance and making sure that focus is not lost, especially when it comes down to data sovereignty. at the community or the producer or the farmer level. And I think one of the things that was last being shared in our group was, what are we doing to orientate towards data inclusion, about really understanding how these systems and works towards digital public infrastructure are truly improving equity, improving smallholder justice and smallholders' capacity at the table. Not just saying that, but putting more on their shoulders and creating a more efficient system for exclusion, but rather a more efficient system for inclusion, really favoring data democracy. So I think that's probably it in a nutshell, but there is much more of a rich conversation behind it.
Thank you very much, Liam, for sharing all the insights. Maybe we jump into the thematic areas. And Pascal, you want to maybe add 2-3 things there on the thematic areas? We just have to keep an eye on the time because we're coming to an end of the roundtable.
Yes, I don't want to repeat what Liam already said. We already covered some of these topics, but one thing we discussed quite intensively was the topic of communication and awareness, which could be an idea to create an additional cross-cutting working group on information sharing and communication in general, to create also knowledge in the different target groups DIASCA has on the different levels. And second, this goes a bit in the direction already, to also work on the governance, so different governance aspects, and this also on regional level, to really consider the concerns and also solutions in the different regions and how this could be brought back to the wider discussion. In a nutshell, there was much more, but with respect to time, I'll leave it with that.
No, perfect. But maybe just to emphasize, because there's also the link, Liam, to your group, where it was like there's so much that DIASCA and the stakeholders already have produced. So it's really about compiling all that knowledge, right? Make that available, the dissemination of information. Pascal, you said different levels also means different languages. And I don't mean the language itself, but like different technical understanding. We have some very technical information. We have very different target groups. So maybe that would really be a core, because Dave, I want to quote you from group 1, the barrier in the field is not technical. That was interesting. Sorry for stealing that quote. It's a lot about the human factor, right? And that's also what we heard about. Matthew, maybe over to you. 2-3 things you want to add, emphasize on, something that has been missing so far.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that our friend Gregory from ITC shared the wisdom not to expand too much, because we're tackling big issues that have that deserve continued focus. We did discuss some additional thematic areas to get to, but before moving on to those, I think also just to underscore Gregory's point, Raymond from Sierra Leone also just pointed out that we have not sort of we're not kind of at a mission accomplished yet on a number of these topics, not the least of which is forest monitoring and the other elements of EUDR in all of the global community. So I think one other sort of functional group that DIASCA and its partner network might consider is additional test cases to identify, okay, we might think that we have a tool set, and Jonas does a fantastic presentation of kind of one of those stacks, and yet when the rubber hits the road, is it what might be missing in a context like Sierra Leone? And so if DIASCA could kind of continue to have test cases beyond those that were already mentioned on this call, to realize where there might be gaps, and where maybe it's not the role of DIASCA necessarily to solve those gaps, but to kind of crowd in other partners who can provide additional resources. So that's one. I think just broadly speaking, that there's still a lot of work to be done in both the thematic topics, the 3 kind of thematic topics, and then the functional cross-cutting groups, which include the governance and data democracy piece that both Liam and Pascal mentioned, and there was also kind of interest in the structural assets like data model, et cetera. When we feel ready to move on to additional thematic topics, some of the ones that were discussed were obviously in the environmental stewardship space, so regen agriculture and carbon seem like very likely next topics, and in the human and economic development space, things around labor, etc.
Right. Thank you very much, Matthew, for this. Noted. I mean, there's the link then also to the thematic areas that Ian, you discussed again there to make that link. No surprise on carbon, regenerative agriculture, the human perspective. Then, how did you call it? Just the human
and economic development.
Oh, human. That makes sense. Human economic development. All right. We're coming to an end of our roundtable. So first of all, thanks to the three of you for providing the brief summary of what you discussed in the breakout sessions. For the roundtable, as you all know, at the beginning, we said this is to inform of what we have achieved to date, right? We want to give you the opportunity to connect and exchange and then discuss the way forward. I think that's what we've done now. Of course, we scratched the surface. Pascal, Liam, Matthew, and the others, quite a few food for thought. John also pops up here, a lot of food for thought for our homework to be done for the next steps. And with this, over to Lars, right? What's the way forward now? After the roundtable, what's next?
Yeah, thank you all for your participation and the rich discussions in the breakout. I don't want to extend it too much longer beyond we're already over time. We have had this is a kind of to a certain degree, this is a kind of restart. We haven't had a roundtable for a long time. Luckily, we're now having more resources, and somebody also said it was Elizabeth who was asking for a reorientation, and that's exactly what we are currently planning to do, namely really taking stock and convening certain actors, possibly including you, in deploying a redefinition of a strategy, and also speed up. That was another issue that was mentioned on communication, because I think in working with stakeholders, communication is key. You haven't communicated so much in the past, but done it more worked more secretly in the background, if you want. And without taking much more time, I just have one slide to share. This has been mentioned a couple of times already. The AgX conference is a hands-on conference in 2 weeks already. It is on invitation only. It is hands-on. It is on digital public infrastructure and plus human plus artificial intelligence. And it is hosted by CG, DIASCA, and the Gates Foundation. If you're interested in participating, please reach out. And we will communicate. We will definitely take a certain summer break, but we will definitely communicate and about upcoming events and roundtables latest after the summer break. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Lars, and well-deserved summer break for everybody involved. So this, I would say, we officially conclude the roundtable. So first of all, big thanks to everybody for the valuable contributions, to all of our speakers for giving the updates on the working groups and the different thematic areas, for everybody being engaged in the breakout sessions and the speed dating. And as Lars said, we'll keep you informed on the next steps after the well-deserved summer break. And then there's a lot of homework already on the table for the next phase. Looking forward to it, and see you at one of the next roundtables. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
And
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.